Sometimes it feels like we are either living in or heading towards a future that has been well described in many a novel or movie. It would probably be more accurate to take those novels and movies and blend them into one melange of dystopian lunacy. Of course, we could easily add a few to this Venn diagram like Mad Max, The Walking Dead, The Hunger Games, Terminator, WALL-E, or a variety of others. How to become a post-apocalyptic warrior. Part 1. Walking the walk. If all hell breaks loose, which it might, and flying left, right, and center, what is going to be something that provides you with the ability to withstand it and not go down in the first wave? I have a bunch of answers to this question. The next 4 weeks, I will provide a good portion of them. Sometimes it feels like we are either living in or heading towards a future that has been well described in many a novel or movie. It would probably be more accurate to take those novels and movies and blend them into one melange of dystopian lunacy. Of course, we could easily add a few to this Venn diagram like Mad Max, The Walking Dead, The Hunger Games, Terminator, WALL-E, or a variety of others. But you get my drift. Feel free to add yours in the comments. Last month, I delved into the theme of our profoundly sick society. This was inspired by Jiddu Krishnamurti's quote, "It's no measure of health to be well-adjusted to profoundly sick society." This month, we are going to explore how to not be well-adjusted, or to be well-unadjusted, or perhaps to be unwell-adjusted. Whatever. The basic idea is to embrace one's exceptionality in the face of the pervasive mediocrity and sickness that is unfortunately accepted as normal. On this point, those of us who have been kicking it for more than 4 decades, or perhaps less as well, have probably heard a doctor or someone else declare with authority that the reason you or someone else is experiencing blank, fill in the blank here, is because you are getting older. To blame aging for anything and everything that has to do with feeling or performing in a diminished way is so commonplace that it is basically paraded around as fact. For example, you have sore knees because you are getting older, or you are tired because you are older. Well, when I was a kid and watched Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, I remember Indy telling Marion in response to her comment about how he was not the man she knew 10 years ago, quote, "It's not the years, it's the mileage."
Not the man I knew 10 years ago.
It's not the years, honey. It's the mileage.
That has always stuck with me. The truth in that statement captures 2 things. 1, years matter less than wear and tear. And 2, mileage can have less of an effect on condition and performance if we have good maintenance, care, and servicing. Kind of like a car, but different. So let's break free of the acceptability of being sick in our society and one of the oldest excuses in the book, aging, and embrace some philosophy and practice that enhances our exceptionality, health, and youthfulness. I often think it is important for my writing, videos, information to provide practical and actionable items to offset the heady reflections and potential of a doom and gloom mentality. Here we go with a month full of it. I recognize that some might like a little critical rant more than putting health practice into action. I don't think this is necessarily a great long-term proclivity, but I enjoy ranting. It's cathartic. So I will strive to throw at least a short rant in every week. Maybe next month I will get back to a more robust critical social commentary. Let me know your preferences. Maybe I'll listen. Maybe I won't. Anyways, the rest of this will move forward with some practical information that will both have you healthier now and more prepared to thrive as a post-apocalyptic warrior. There is also a small rant at the end of the article for those uninterested in practicalities. See? Try to make everyone happy, which isn't a good thing. On that note, let's walk the walk, literally. Walking the walk. Surviving any major meltdown of society might very well include a loss of some or all technology. If it is not an outright loss, it is likely to be a rise in scarcity. To survive and rebuild, one will need resilience in every way imaginable. Let's start with one of humanity's greatest physical superpowers, long-distance walking. Yep, one of the things that separates us from our animal relatives and mammalian cousins is our capacity to have great endurance as bipedal walkers. We are not the fastest, strongest, best swimmers or climbers, nor do we sit as an apex species in regard to a variety of other powerful physical attributes. However, walking does give us great advantages, and we are naturally really good at it. Unfortunately, many of us have neglected this ability, and our modern lifestyles have made us rusty with it. Many of us avoid it and even reject it as being as worthwhile as it is. Without harnessing it, many have become weak. I discussed the growing weakness in my last week's article, 6 Ways People Are Being Made Weaker, and in my video rant here. This is why I think it is important for me to offer support in gaining strength and capacity in as many ways as possible. In light of this, I like to test things out on myself before I recommend anything. I enjoy treating my life and body like a lab, changing variables and noting the findings. Clearly, this is an N of 1 study approach, but comes with a robust literature review backing my findings. I'm not giving medical advice, nor claiming the universal benefits of what works for me, for others. However, I think there's some useful information here that will help you. My birthday challenge. I decided to challenge myself leading up to a milestone birthday and see how young, i.e. biological age, I could make myself prior to turning the big 5-0. I declared a 20,000 step a day for 20 days as a goal. I completed my 20,000 steps a day for 20 days challenge on May 19th. My start date was April 30th. It was not easy. Granted, I began the challenge in good shape with a regular accumulation of 10,000 or more steps a day for over a year. I quite regularly had hit 20,000 before in a day, maybe once or twice every 2 weeks on average. I even topped 30,000 in a day before. So you could say I have some experience with step counts, monitoring the volume, and various other metrics. Here are my findings. Let's start with significant metrics of steps at 20,000 K a day. There's lots, but we're just going to do 3. 1, a 20,000 K day means likely 10 kilometers or more of walking, sometimes depending on your stride length and speed, that number could be even closer to almost 15 kilometers a day. That's like almost 10 miles. 2, that results in a significant amount of hours walking. These hours regularly surpass 3, but how you are getting that time can be done without completely compromising your ability to do anything else in the day. More on this later. And number 3, on average, you're probably burning around 1,000 plus calories, which depends, of course, on your basal metabolic rate, speed, and the terrain in your walks, your own body weight and lean muscle mass, and a whole bunch of other variables into the minutia. So let's talk about the overall experience. As I mentioned, I came into this challenge ready and experienced. I do not recommend beginning at 20,000 steps a day routine of 20 days or even less without having consistent high step counts leading up to it. 10,000 a day for a 1 or 2 months is probably a minimum recommendation. I had a canine factor involved. So I have a dog. The challenge started well with lots of motivation. Having a dog makes it generally easy, considering my dog's youthfulness and energy, to achieve 10,000 steps in a day. But that requires me to take over the bulk of his walking from the other people in my family. Time commitments, time expenditure. The first 5 days were not significantly challenging, although I did quickly notice the amount of time it was taking, especially when days had many other obligations in them. This was not my only form of exercise, as I continued to do resistance training in a gym 5 or 6 days a week for an hour to an hour and a half throughout. Energy expenditure. It is clear that my energy expenditure was high, and at first I saw significant changes in both scale, weight, and body composition for such a short time. However, as I sustained this practice, I recognized that I was probably beyond the point of optimal efficacy for my physique goals. I believe by about day 8, there was a low-level fatigue setting in, and I experienced soreness that I don't usually experience in my daily physical activity regime. As I moved into the day 12 range, I experienced some slight indications of loss of strength in the gym, which to me is a clear sign that I had gone past the optimal activity level for myself at this point in my life. This underlying low-level fatigue and loss of strength and performance in the gym resulted in increased hunger and cravings, which diminished the fat loss benefits that I had initially experienced. The amount of energy expenditure plus extended hours of wakefulness on my feet resulted in less optimal recovery, which tends to lead to a diminished willpower and cravings for less healthy food choices. I noticed this. In fact, I indulged in various sweets and other suboptimal, for physique improvements, carbohydrate choices. There were even a few days where I had to finish my steps as the clock neared the midnight hour. Cutting into sleep is ill-advised for any long-term health program, but not catastrophic in the span of a 20-day challenge for someone who's already in good physical fitness and health. So let's talk about the aftermath. The aftermath. After the 20 days, I immediately dropped down to just over 10,000 steps for the subsequent day, and within a day or two of that, I had my lowest step count in over a year or more with only 7,500 steps. Even though my streak of 10,000 steps or more per day had been broken, my achievement of 20,000 steps a day for 20 days made that misstep, pun intended, not much of a concern for me at all. Overall, my body weight shifted from around 202 pounds down to about 195 and fluctuated back up and down a few times as I made poor food choices and poor quantity choices. My body weight never exceeded 199 since I began the challenge. I stand at just over 5'11", and my body fat percentage is currently probably between 10% and 13%. I might have sacrificed a small amount of lean muscle, which doesn't make me happy, but I can accept that as a small price to pay for this challenge as I am sufficiently familiar, knowledgeable, skilled, and experienced in regaining muscle after losses. However, generally speaking, at a later stage in life, this is not a great recipe for health. Age-related sarcopenia continues to be a major concern for all the downstream effects on one's health that can occur with it. And both the literature and my own opinion would claim that we want to prevent this as much as possible. Now, let's talk about survival and success strategies for 20,000 steps a day for 20 days. A few things I did to offset potential over expenditure of energy resulting in muscle loss were to continue weightlifting at the gym while attempting to maintain my strength in all my lifts. I also was very diligent about keeping my protein intake high, hitting almost 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight on a daily basis. I did this without measuring, but I have experienced gauging it from any past macronutrient breakdown recordings. Some days I found myself walking around my living room or house at the end of the day to get the needed steps in to hit my goal for that day. But in general, I avoided sitting when I had the opportunity to stand and pace or walk. This is not the greatest thing for making others feel comfortable or for your social life. People tend to find humans who are pacing to be anxiety producing, or at the very least, conducive to relaxation, not conducive or less conducive to relaxation and calm. This technique is key to making this fit with a life that has other demands and to not forcing oneself to unreasonably extend amounts of time focusing on just walking. It is quite surprising how many steps one can get by putting one plate away at a time at the gym instead of two, pacing around between sets, moving around the house instead of sitting for no particular reason, reading emails on one's phone while doing laps in the living room, and other such efficiencies that both save time and the need for focused dedication just to the act of amassing the required steps. Let's talk about some of the pros of 20,000 steps a day for 20 days. Okay, number one, 20,000 steps a day offers a considerable buffer to some poor nutritional choices and higher caloric intake. 2, this practice results in almost guaranteed fat loss with zone 2 cardio, which reshapes the body without extensive taxing that could result in muscle loss and or dramatically increased hunger cravings. What I experienced might have had to do with the fact that I still maintained my intensity at the gym and had various other work-life demands that cut into my sleep and recovery as well. Nonetheless, I essentially maintained all my muscle with maybe a loss of 0.5 pound or less at the most. Number 3, gets you outside, in nature in my case, and often time by yourself to be together with your thoughts, listen to podcasts and or audiobooks, and reflect on various aspects of one's life. Okay, so here's some cons of 20,000 steps a day for 20 days. 1, significant amount of time is consumed hitting 20,000 steps. It is unlikely to be sustainable for most people, and depending on your ability to get steps in while doing other tasks, might not even be achievable at all in someone's busy life. Number 2, While I believe that a certain amount of steps are beneficial to recovery from the gym, and in particular leg day, this amount of steps probably is detrimental or slightly detrimental to gains and performance. In my mind, 20,000 steps is probably excessive for most anything, and would fall in the right downside on a bell curve in regard to the law of diminishing returns. This might not be the case if someone is young and their career or current job is to be capable of high walking capacity. Again, it would depend on terrain, speed, and weight carried, as well as various other considerations. Number 3, general expended energy is in one area will likely lead to demotivation in other areas carried forward for a long time. While I was able to overcome a loss of motivation and still get a lot done, I did notice a desire to go to bed earlier and experienced a struggle to maintain motivation for various tasks. Tips for achieving 20,000 steps a day for 20 days. Number 1, get as many unintentional steps in as possible. What this means is utilize multitasking and avoid sitting or being still when you could be pacing, circling, walking, or however else you can get steps up. The steps add up and cut incredible amount of time out of your focused step counting walks. 2, when possible and as desired, walk on flat and easy trails so you can get steps in without too much overall exhaustion, and have the option to increase your pace so you can cut some time off total walking without adding to tiredness. Number 3, obviously track everything. This can be done with your Fitbit or your phone or any other passive mechanism that will count steps even when you are not focused on them directly. Number 4, stay hydrated and eat the right foods to bring up energy. This is not the place for me to discuss nutrition, but we can do that a subsequent time. And number 5, footwear is crucial. For me, I've adjusted to wearing minimalist footwear for almost 10 years now. Changing footwear into shoes that are more narrow or have a heel or walking in sandals or flip-flops results in a slower pace and various other aches, pains, and compromised performance and recovery for myself. It might be different for you. However, I would still strongly advise in not taking on new footwear at the beginning of such an endeavor, as well as choosing the most comfortable and suitable footwear for you. And here are some recommendations from going through a 20,000 steps a day challenge for 20 days, which could apply beyond this. 1, 20,000 steps a day is a lot on any day. Doing that for multiple days in a row probably has some benefit. Doing that for 20 days in a row is almost certainly going past the peak of these benefits. So maybe don't do it. 2, as mentioned above, get in as many steps while you're not in dedicated walking practice. I believe this approach should be utilized for most people in their regular life, regardless of whether they're trying to hit 20,000 steps, 10,000 steps, or 8,000 steps. We sit too much, and often for no good reason. Take advantage of opportunities to get a few extra steps in, and it's going to benefit your health and your fitness. Number 3, it is important to take stock of all the stressors, from the physical, mental, emotional, and others in one's life, to recognize how hard to push in any and all areas. The notion of allostatic load aims to reflect on this. Doing a challenge is great. It can be highly motivational, but timing that challenge in one's life so it doesn't coincide with other unintentional or intentional challenges is probably a wise idea. 4, don't compromise sleep. As much as possible, guard and prioritize sleep. Number 5, nutrition is always important, even if you gain leeway by expending more energy than usual. More on walking you can see in the description below, where I'll put some links from an Instagram video and some studies. Now, let me do a little rant here on laziness. Laziness is pervasive. It is more obvious in the realm of physicality, but it is perhaps more destructive in the realm of intellectual rigor and critical thinking. People lean into convenience and comfort, both in terms of settling into a couch and a bag of potato chips, as well as settling into the directives from the experts, government, and their favorite media outlet. People outsource their health, world perspective, values, and just about everything else that can shape an individual. The forces that influence us rarely care about distinct human lives, but rather are heavily invested in a collectivist agenda. While it might be worthwhile to have some care about the greater good, it is a very slippery slope to self-sacrifice and unacceptable sacrifices of personal well-being, liberty, and even life. If you don't believe me, just study history. In fact, it would seem when people take personal responsibility for their own health and well-being, they do better and are more likely to contribute positively to society, affecting improvements in the health and well-being of others as well. Some people need support, but I would still maintain the old adage that it is better to teach a man to fish than give a man a fish. This way he can feed himself for life instead of just having a meal for a day. Lazy people are easier to rule and easier to hurt. If we want to withstand the storm, we need to work towards being harder to kill. And it is what all our ancestors did to get us to this time. We owe it to them and to our children and the future of humanity. So let's get up and let's go. Again, please subscribe, share, comment, crush the algorithm, defeat the AI, and join Team Human.